Just kidding. All right, so we're going to get started in a second. Let me get something real quick. Let me over the Torah portion now that everyone is here. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Lord, who has sanctified your commandments and commanded us to engage in study of the words of Torah. Amen. So those weeks where they tell you a short story, a short version of, if I can get the words out. I was up till 2 a.m. last night, doing the slides for this. So I can bed, so I just stopped this presentation, this Torah portion. It will go beyond the slides a little bit because I ran out of time to finish the slides. But we'll see how it goes. I'll make it interesting. This week's Torah falls between Genesis 47, verses 28, through Genesis 50, verses 26. Pretty much we're ending up the chapter in Genesis. It's called Vayechi. Vayechi is Hebrew. Basically, the Hebrew word chai comes from Vayechi. If you know, chaim, lechaim means to life. Chai being the root word of chaim, all right, to be alive. And Vayechi, what we do is we take, to give you a little bit look at it, we take the he, which would be the chai, yechi, which would be future, and then we put so yechi means he will live, and then we do the va before yechi, which means and. Is the va. If you know Hebrew, that would be a vav with an aval. Turn tense word past tense. So, who lived? Jacob. Interesting Torah portion. I include snippets of Torah scrolls. I found a website online that has a Yemenite scroll. It's going to be slightly different from a typical Masoretic scroll, but there's going to be a lot of similarities. On the scroll, I don't know why it's glitching, by the way. If you look up here, let me see, where's the mouse option on here?
That one doesn't have the mouse option.
Use the yellow dot. If you're looking on the right, Lech Lecha, that's Genesis 12, verses 1. So that's the Torah. So the Tower of Babel and all that is before. So this is before Hebrews read right to left. So everything coming up to this yellow block be Genesis 11. Everything afterwards, starting with this Vayomer here, will be Genesis Adonai Elah. Later to show you that this is the norm. Chapter 11 would be 12. This is chapter 12, portion Lech Lecha, 2 the space of at least 9 letters to show you we're moving on to a new Torah portion here. That's how the Torah is written on a Torah scroll. And last week's Torah portion was Vayigash, and this week's Torah portion is Vayechi. And if you notice the Hebrew here, this is the word Vayechi. Vayechi Yaakov ba'aretz Mitzrayim. Jacob lived in the land of Egypt. And before will be the Torah portion of Vayigesh, but the space between the two portions is only 1 letter. So normally, the norm for spaces between Torah portions is 9 letters on a Torah scroll. But in our case, the only case in Torah, between Vayechi and Vayigash, there's a space of only 1 letter. The rabbis call this a closed section. So, why is this Torah portion a closed section is the question. So, our Torah portion begins, Vayechi Yaakov ba'eretz Mitzrayim. Jacob lived 17 years in the land of Egypt, so that the span of Jacob's life came to be 147 years. So this is where Jacob's going to bless his sons. He's going to tell Joseph, do not bury me in Egypt. He's going to bless Joseph's 2 sons, and then he's also going to bless the 12 tribes of Israel, and then we're going to finish out the book of Exodus. Very interesting. Why is it a closed Torah portion? One opinion is that the reason why Vayechi is a closed Torah portion has to do with the fact that when Joseph has to bury Jacob, he has to ask Pharaoh for permission. He has to ask Pharaoh for permission to bury his father. Think about that. Why does he have to ask Pharaoh permission to bury his father? And then by the time Joseph dies, he says, take my bones out of here when you guys leave, almost as if he's at the point now where he can't leave, and his brothers can't leave. See where I'm going? Think of it, in these last few Torah portions, it's where Israel is going into their first exile, Egypt. All the exiles are based off of this. All the exiles, we today live in exile. We're not in the land. All of it's based off of the Egyptian exile, right? That's the foundational layers. Torah is cyclical. Time is cyclical. It's not linear. History repeats itself. If you know the past, you know the future. You know prophecy because you looked back into the Torah and you saw how everything was. And a leopard doesn't change its spots. The nations do not change their spots. And also God doesn't change. So history repeats itself. So, one reason is they're going into exile. And as they're going into Egypt, the doors of Egypt are closing behind them. That's why this is a closed Torah portion. The only one person can open those doors again, and that will be the Redeemer, Moses. That's one reason why it's a closed Torah portion. Also that their hearts are going to be troubled. Their hearts are going to be closed off to God during this time. That's one reason. Another reason why it's a closed Torah portion. Another reason is Jacob wanted to disclose not just the end of the Egyptian exile, but the end of all exiles. He wanted to disclose the end of the times to his descendants. He wanted to disclose the times we live in right now. This is the opinion of a lot of the rabbis, the Acharit Hayamim. And he actually references this when blessing his sons. Come, gather together, that way I can tell you what will happen, Bacharit Hayamim, what will happen in the end of days. Those are the exact Hebrew words. To show you that this Torah portion, he wants to show, but does he fully show his sons what will happen in the end of days? No, because even that was closed off. It's still, and even for me, it's a puzzle why these things can't be revealed. But God is the one that decides that, and that maybe part of the reason why it can't be revealed is so that when we are going through the exile, we're learning to trust him. We're learning to seek him. We're learning to listen for his voice. And it's part for us during our exile. Because if we do not know that when the hour is that he returns to gather us from the exile, then maybe we're going to watch a little bit closer. If I do not know when the bridegroom is coming and I'm the bride, when the bridegroom is coming to take me to the wedding feast, right? Then I am going to be a little more watchful. I am going to be motivated to be like the 5 wise virgins as opposed to the 5 foolish. So that could be one idea of why this Torah portion is a closed Torah portion. Because Jacob's sons had the possibility of knowing what would happen to them at the end of the Egyptian exile and also the end of the exile of the world when all the nations of Israel are gathered back together to the land under King Messiah. So I want to play this out throughout the Torah portion today. If we don't get done with this, it's okay. I want to try to, I'm watching the timer. I want to try to leave some discussion time too. Vayechi. It's the reason it's called Vayechi because it references continuing life. If you take the first verse of Genesis 47 verses 28, and you take the blue letters I have up here, Vayechi Yaakov. We talked about the word being Vayechi, meaning he was living. You're going to want to say he lived. Jacob lived ba'aretz Mitzrayim, right? Jacob lived in the land of Egypt. That's the natural way to translate it, but it's imperfect tense. Vayechi is imperfect tense. The perfect tense would be chai. You notice Vayechi said he was living. Chai means he lived. They seem similar, but they're slightly different. Chai, he lived. Vayechi, he was living. What's the difference between the two? Chai, he lived, is completed action. Completed action. He lived, he died. It was done. Vayechi, he was living, denotes action that is still ongoing. It's still action that is in the process of being fulfilled. It's almost cyclical. So that is the difference between the two. Vayechi, he was living, is what is used in this Torah portion. Vayechiu, kol yamei adam asher chai. These were the days in which Adam lived. Chai, you can see how it's perfect tense up there. So, our Torah portion begins with an imperfect verb, talking about how life is continuing. That really for us, even in the midst of our exile to the nations, as a part of Israel, the promise for us is still everlasting life in the midst of that. That really none of us actually die. We think of it when I breathe my last breath, I die. And that's the end. And even though we talk about heaven and hell, we still kind of think about what we can see, the ending of that physical existence being the end of life. But really, it's just the beginning. Vayechi, in the midst of exile, talks about how Jacob, this Torah portion is the Torah portion where Jacob is preparing to die. But he's really not dying. And if you actually look at the Hebrew in this text, when it comes later in the Torah portion, when it says, and Jacob expired, it does not say Vayamet, Jacob died. It says he expired to show you that he really didn't die. Even though they buried him, even though they embalmed him, he spiritually was not dead, is the point. And the point is, if you are a part of Jacob's seed, if you're a part of Abraham's seed, Yeshua says those are the ones who believe in God. Those are the ones who believe in God and they obey God. They do not just believe in God the Father, they also believe in Yeshua. They also believe in the Messiah. Right? Those ones are Abraham's seed, and they never really die. They never really die. So that takes away the fear of death, doesn't it? Because my hope is not ending when I leave this world. All right. It says in Genesis 47, verse 29, Vayecharvu Yemei Yisrael Lamot. The days approached for Israel to die. He summoned his son Joseph and said to him, do me this favor, place your hand, and pledge, and pretty much do not bury me in Egypt. I did not change that. That should say Yameh, which is this word should be up there. That was a typo. Literally, this word here, Yameh, is plural, means days. And if you connect it to the Haftorah, right, you'll notice the same word appearing. So the days appeared for David to die. This is the Torah portion. So for every Torah portion you have, you're also going to have a corresponding prophet's reading. And part of the way these two, Genesis 47 was connected to a prophetic reading, the Haftarah, which is the traditional prophet reading, is because in this Torah portion, Jacob is dying, but he's exhorting his descendants. And this Torah portion, David is about to die, and he's exhorting his descendants. So you see the connection. Vayekorvu yamei Israel, the days approach for Israel to die. Vayekorvu yamei David lamut. Same thing, almost same identical wording. Days approach for both to die. The point is, it's kind of weird the way it's structured. Yameh, which will be a yod, a mem, and a yod, is plural. The days approached for them to die, for them to leave this world. It's days. It's not just one day. It's almost implying that you die on many days, which is kind of weird. Really, what the hint is on a deeper level is that when you leave this world, if you're someone like Jacob, if you're someone like King David, you stand before the judge at the end of the world, and you hold all the days of your life in your hand. That's really what it's saying there. You hold all those days in your hand. And you're saying, God, you gave me breath in my lungs every morning. You gave me a choice to choose you, to follow you every day. And I took that gift every day and I lived it to the fullest. I have all my days, kol yameh. I have all my days in my hand, and I can account for all my days and say that I served you with all my days. That's what it means. So while we are in this exile waiting for the return, the motivation is, how are you living your days? Are you living your days like Father Jacob, who can hold all his days before the judge at the end of the world, Olam Hazeh, the end of this world, and say, God, the days that you gave me, I served you every day. And I look back on some of my days, even some of my days this week. I'm like, I don't know if I can account for them all. But here's how you account for them all. If you're someone like David who makes mistakes along the way, you learn from your mistakes. You grow from your mistakes. You use your mistakes as a catalyst to drive you forward. You don't give up, but you keep seeking God. There are a lot of things we can't go back and change. There's a lot of things, even in a lot of our lives, where we can't go back and change. Where we could have served God better, where we could have honored God better. But we can't go back and change that. What we can do is turn that into a testimony. What we can do is say, that is not the end of my story. What we can do is say, now I can use that past hurt, that past trauma, those past sins that I've repented of, that I've healed from, to heal others with. See how you are taking all your days now, and all your days have meaning. So you could have Jacob, who served God his whole life, right? But even he wasn't perfect, and he learned from that, and he went through the fire, and it refined him. Or you could have someone like David, who had his ups and downs, but still pursued God with all his heart, and they, at the end of their lives, have all their days to account for. So that's what that means right there. So he's It's a little bit of encouragement and an exhortation for all of us. So, Jacob, with all his days in his hands, he calls in Genesis 49 for all his sons to appear before him, because he's going to bless them one last time. Vayikra Yaakov el banav vayomer ha'asfu va'agida lechem et asher echra etchem. And notice what's in the red, both in the English and the Hebrew up there. Bacharit chayamim, days to come. Literally means the last days. He says, come together, I'm going to tell you what will befall you in the last days. So really what he's sharing with them is not just physical, what's going to happen to them leaving Egypt, but he's sharing this will happen to the nation of Israel in the last days. Taking a quick pause. Each and every one of you, you guys are not the Jewish people, that's the tribe of Judah, but you are grafted into Israel a couple of ways. You're either grafted into Israel as those who have, as Romans says, from the nations who have accepted the Jewish Messiah, Yeshua. That makes you the wild branch grafted in. Or if you consider the fact that the northern 10 tribes were scattered to the nations of the world, right? And they were dispersed amongst the nations, and God is bringing back the nations, i.e. the 10 tribes back from among the nations. You could take both those ways and realize that you are Israel. Either way, you are Israel, and this is more your story. This is the story about your return from exile. As the gates are closing behind them as they're going into exile. As the gates have closed behind us as we've gone into exile. We're not in Egypt anymore. We're in Babylon. We're not necessarily in Babylon anymore. It's gone down from Babylon to Persia to Greece to Rome. That's where we are right now. And you look around our culture, you see a lot of Egyptian imagery, you see a lot of Greco-Roman imagery, even down to the sports that I love. I love football, basketball, whatnot. They meet in stadiums, coliseums, everything that's Greco-Roman. That's a sign of the culture we live in. Even our education system, that's Greco-Roman. Everything from the way we do banking, money, that's Greco-Roman. The way we act, the way we dress in our culture, our entertainment, that's Greco-Roman. Politics, Greco-Roman. We're in exile. And you realize why we can't really change it, what's going on around us. The answer is maybe you can change it and influence it a little bit, but also don't stress out too much about it because you are in exile. Egypt, Rome, Greece, that's not your home. Our home is in the land of Israel. When Mashiach comes back and takes us back to the land, that's our promise. So when we look at Jacob giving this blessing to his sons, what he's really doing is we look at Jacob as our father. Because if you are Israel, you're Bnei Israel, that means you're sons of Israel. That means that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is your physical father. Now that changes how you view the Bible when you realize that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are your fathers. They're very much your fathers, just like your own father is. Very much the same way God is a father to you. Your dad is a father to you. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the four matriarchs are your mothers. Now that you have a personal connection to the Bible. This is about you. Now, I want to talk. There's a lot I could talk about here. The phrase Bacharit Chayamim, interesting side note to tuck into your brain, occurs 13 times in the Old Testament. That phrase corresponds to the 13 attributes of God in Exodus 34, 6 through 7. So, Acharit Chayamim represents in the last days God will be known to the nations. That's a prophecy of God revealing his divine nature, his 13 attributes of mercy and also justice to the world. So just a little nugget there. Has a gematria of 726. If I break up all those letters in Bacharit Chayamim you see on the left, Each of those Hebrew letters adds up to 726. Words with the Hebrew gematria of 726 means ve'eshtachave, meaning I bowed down in worship. And the sides of the incense altar, which were covered in pure gold. The incense altar represented the prayers of the people, the prayers of the service. So really what this is an allusion to is that the worship of the one true God and the prayers of the people, i.e. the temple service, being restored in the last days. Very interesting. If you take another gematria approach, which is more ordinal, like what is the order of the letters? Because up here in the last slide, you saw how the letters, what I did was I broke them up by their numerical value. You can also take gematria by its ordinal. What order is it in the alphabet? You come up with 114. Bana mizbeach is a phrase that begins, he built an altar, with 114. And Mechanidah is the waters of separation in Numbers 19, verse 21. That has a gematria of 114. Both of which showing you that the altar will be restored. And also Mechanidah is the waters of separation when a person came in contact with a corpse. They needed to be sprinkled with water that contained the ashes of the red heifer. And that purified them. So it's talking about the purification that will happen, that is in part already happening, but prophetically will be culminated with the second return of Messiah. So here's also what I want to do. While we have time running out, I want to discuss the blessings of these tribes, but I want to zero in on Judah's blessing. And you could spend all day, you could spend a whole lifetime talking about these blessings. But I personally want to take today, the rest of the 20 minutes that we have, maybe 10 minutes, leave some time for discussion where we can talk about Judah's blessing and see prophecy in that. With Judah's blessing, I want to take a Targum Onkelos approach. And I just said Targum Onkelos, and everyone's like, what is a Targum Onkelos? So, to give you a little backstory, Targum is basically a word that means translation. It's a Latin word that means translation. When the children of Israel went into exile in Babylon for 70 years, the language of Babylon was Aramaic. So their children needed to learn Torah. The people needed to learn Torah. Everyone needed to learn Torah. But what do when you don't understand the Hebrew language and you need to know the Torah in your own language? Right? Kind of like the same dilemma of where we are today. Do any of us really know Hebrew the way we should? I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to teach myself, and I like to teach others about it and talk to others about it, but we're all in the process of learning it, and we don't speak it as our native language. So what do? Each and every one of us, you'll probably hold up a King James Bible or an ESV or an NASB, English translated Bible, so you can read the Torah in your own language. Guess what? When they went into Babylon, that's what they did. They took the Torah. They put it into Aramaic. So that their children, they still, when they were in synagogue, would read the Torah from the Hebrew, but as a part of casual study of the Torah, they would study the Aramaic. Guess what? When they studied the Aramaic Torah, the Aramaic translation of the Torah oftentimes contained, it was very paraphrasical. So how the Jewish community understood Torah, how the Jewish first century and before understood how to interpret Torah, they included that interpretation in how they translated the Torah. That's what the Targums are. They're those translations. A man named Onkelos was a convert to Judaism. This would be around the time of the Roman Empire. What he does is he represents you and me. Think of it this way. This is where I think it's really cool. Today we're going to quote from the Onkelos. And he represents you and me. Because he was actually the nephew of a Roman emperor. And he saw the merit of Torah and the way the Jewish people lived. And he's like, I need to live that way. And he gave up all his paganism to follow the one true God. And in doing so, he became a very learned, and he brought back the Targums, because during the time of the Roman Empire, they were starting to speak Greek and Latin in the Roman Empire, and they didn't need Aramaic anymore. But he was the one who, he officially republished the Targums. So Nehemiah talks about how when they came out of the Babylonian captivity, they read the translation of the Torah to the public in Aramaic, Nehemiah 8 verses 8, if you want to read that. So today what I want to do is I want to talk about Judah's blessing from a Targum perspective. All right. So beginning with Judah's blessing, Genesis 49 verses 9, it says, Gur Aryeh Yehuda. That's the Hebrew. The Aramaic is going to say, I do not understand Aramaic. I'm not as fluent in it. A cub, so the Hebrew is a cub lion, or a lion cub is Judah. From the prey, my son, you have ascended. He crouches, he lies down like a lion, like an awesome lion. Who dares rouse him? That's what the Hebrew text follows. On the left side, you're going to see with the Targum, how it follows. In the beginning, he will be a ruler, is how Targum, how Onkelos translated the first part of this verse. A cub, the emphasis is on the red letter. The cub is Judah. Judah is a cub. Means he'll be a ruler in the beginning. Number 2 is the lion is Judah. So the emphasis now is on the lion because you have a cub lion. A gur means a cub, and aryeh is a lion. So cub, lion is the literal order of the Hebrew. So Onkelos, for the second part, he's going to emphasize the lion part, the part that comes last. He's going to say, in the end, this cub will no longer be a lion. This cub will no longer be a lion cub. He's going to be a grown lion. In other words, he's going to be a king now. And from the prey, my son, you have ascended. Basically, this one has defeated the death penalty. He crouches, he lies down like a lion, an awesome lion. Who dares rouse him? Onkelos translates it. He shall rest and dwell mightily in the land like a lion, an awesome lion. No kingdom shall disturb him. You see how it's taken it? How the Targum is taking the text and it's giving it a political, prophetic interpretation here. So, it says, a rod shall not depart from Yehuda, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh comes. Until Ad Yavo Shiloh. Ad ki yavo Shiloh is the exact Hebrew. Ad ki yavo Shiloh, until Shiloh comes. Very interesting, because the Aramaic says, Adeate, Meshite, Derile, Hi Melchuta. Meshiche is going to be Aramaic, it's going to mean Messiah. So he translates Shiloh as Messiah. And why does he do that? Why does he interpret Shiloh as Messiah? Onkelos and the Aramaic, really, he was going off of the previous Targums. Psalm 76 verse 12 says that Shiloh is actually a contraction of 2 words. Shai, which means a gift, and we'll look at Psalm 76 verse 12, and lo, which means for him. Shiloh. Psalm 76 talks about the rebuilding of the temple and all the nations bringing tribute to the new Messiah king. Shiloh. Tribute for him. Gifts for him. It has a gematria. Shiloh has a gematria of 345. Guess what? Moses, Moshe. You take the Hebrew letters from Moshe, they also have a gematria of 345. The numerical value of the letters in Shiloh is the same numerical value, if you add them up, as the numerical values of the name Moses. So really, Moses, he's the beginning Messiah figure, but if you understand that time's cyclical, you will have a Messiah figure in the end, like Moses, who will redeem all those scattered from all the four corners of the world and bring them back to Israel. In other words, we are awaiting the days of Messiah, the son of David, Yeshua's second coming to bring us back to the land. And also, if you take Shiloh, and you take it, and you take the ordinal, what order are the number letters? What is the order? Is it first, second, third, 22nd? Shiloh adds up to 48. 48 is the numerical value of the Hebrew word Yovel, which means Jubilee, to show you that this is when it's all going to happen. Very interesting. I also want to talk about verse 11 real quick. It says, Osri lagefen iro, and you'll notice that I'll have red words up here and a blue word. The red and the blue word that you see up here at the top is the same word. The red word is how the Torah writes it. It's misspelled. It should be the blue. So when the Hebrew Torah was written, Osri lagefen iro, he will tie his donkey to the vine. Iro should have been spelled like what you see in the blue, but it got misspelled. It should have had a vav at the end, but it has that letter, a hey, at the end. It's misspelled. So, up here is the Hebrew. Down here is what the Aramaic translated as. Yaschar Israel lekarte. He will bring Israel from all around his city. So the question is, how does this Messiah figure do this? And how in the world did Onkelos translate, he ties his donkey to the vine, to Messiah bringing all of Israel around to his city? How does he make that leap? First of all, osri means to bind. I take the Hebrew word asar, I bind. A good example is tefillin. You know, the box on the head, the box on the hand, bind it on your forehead, bind it around your arm. What you do is you wrap it around your arm. I bind it. When I bind something, I make a circle. When I tie my hands, right, I'm tying rope in a circle around my hands. So, and also in the Talmud, osri is related to isru. It's the same Hebrew root, and that means encircle with branches. And they cited that from Psalms 118, verse 27. So this word, osri, which is our first word, he ties, is connected to not just binding, but also you can translate it as encircling. Osri lagefen, he encircles the vine. A gefen is a vine. It signifies Israel. If you read Psalm 80, verse 8, it says that Israel is a vine from Egypt that was redeemed from Egypt. That references you and me. We are the vine. So what he's doing is he's encircling this vine, iro. Now, if I take out all the vowels, and I'm reading this, I might say ira. Ira is feminine, and it means city. So the Hebrew word for his donkey, right up here, it was misspelled on purpose. That way you can see that it can also mean city. And Ira is a city. What city? What is his city? Jerusalem. So you can see how the Targum, the Onkelos, published by a man who's a convert. He represents what it means to be outside of the camp of Israel, ankylos, right? So in doing this, he's representing you and me. And he's saying, as someone who was once outside of the covenant, speaking to other people, including people who were formerly outside the covenant, this is your destiny. That Messiah will one day gather you from the four corners of the world to his city. Going further, I want to finish with something. We might run out of time. It says, Vlasorecha bani otanu. So, he will, and to the long vine branch, the son of his female donkey. Otanu will be female donkey. Vlasorecha means, and to the vine branch, bani otanu. Vlasorecha is related to the Hebrew word letter shurik. The Hebrew word shurik is also a vowel. Think of it as 3 dots. 1, 2, 3. Going diagonal. A segel is a Hebrew vowel that's going to have 3 dots. 1, 2, 3. Make a triangle. A good example is right here in this word. Underneath that, here you see gimel right there, or the pei right there. You see those 3 dots under there? How they're grouped together? A surik, they're going to be slightly falling apart. And what it means is the people, so here's how Onkelos translates it. He will tie the donkey to the vine branch of his donkey's foal. This is how he translates it. He says that the people will build his sanctuary. Like, how in the world did he get that? It says in the Hebrew, Velasorecha, surik. Think of that surik, that vowel that says suruk shares the same root of velasorecha. Same word. Means, think of it this way. Just as the dots, the 3 dots are falling away. So that is what we as Israel, we did. We were falling away. That surik, that vowel, that vine is a weak vine. Because the people have sinned. You and me, we've sinned. We've fallen away. But God will gather this vine back. And in that letter, you'll see 3 dots. Boom, boom, boom. 1, 2, 3, if you can picture it. Falling away. But God's plan is to go find that bottom dot and bring it back up into the fold. And make them more grouped together. When he does that, and we go from being scattered from the 4 corners of the world and being gathered together, what happens is, Bani Otano, his son of his donkey to the vine, or Bani becomes Bana, they will build, and Atono becomes his city. They will build it, meaning his city. So you can see how Onkelos translated that. He said, so basically the prophecy of Judah, and there's more, like, I don't want to waste all your time, but it says, his garments he will launder in wine, his robe in the blood of grapes. When it says his garments he will launder in wine, the Hebrew word is suto. He will launder in the blood of grapes, in wine. Uvad anavim suto, he will wash. And that word is misspelled also. To say, can you hear suta and sota? Do you know what the sota is? The sota is the woman who commits adultery. But no one knows it. So they haul her before the community. And she drinks those bitter waters. because her sin's hidden. She drinks the bitter waters. And either she's vindicated or she's punished. Right? But that is one of those things that is more prophetic than it's physical. Because the prophetic side of it is that you and me, we are the soda as a part of Israel. And part of Messiah coming back is him washing us in the blood. And that blood washes us, and the Hebrew says sota for a reason, to remind us that that's part of Messiah's mission. That right now, we are walking in the blood of Messiah. But the final redemption occurs when Messiah comes back. The final redemption, the final victory over the grave and death happens when he returns. But guess what? Right now, while I'm waiting for him, I'm still fighting my evil inclination. I'm still fighting my evil desires. I'm still fighting my desire not to serve God, but to serve myself. But one day, my secret nature, my hidden nature, will one day be removed from me. Right now, I'm trying to circumcise my heart, but one day he will take care of the parts of me that I can't circumcise, is the point. And that is why Suta in the Hebrew is misspelled, to show you that the hidden parts get healed too. We could dig deeper into the Torah portion. We could discuss it. There's a lot of meat. I could tell a lot of eyes were glassing over. The point is this. The point is this. And here's why I read Onkelos. Is none of us deserve to be in the kingdom. And I look at prophecy, I look at the end of the days. We got sold into exile for our sins. I deserve to be separated from God. But I have a hope, because I believe in the one true Messiah, that one day he will return. I do not know when he will return, so I get myself ready for when he does return. Part of how I do that is I study Torah. I try to be kind to people, show the love of Messiah to people around me, because he cares about my relationships with others. And I try to love him with everything I have. And I hope that today, blessed you a little bit. I'm sorry if it was a little disorganized. But Abba willing, we'll see his return soon. All right, so I have 1 minute left, so we're going to give 20 seconds per people. Yes. Mike. Yes. It's not ringing yet. I'm seeing 1 minute left on the clock. We're going to give 20 minutes of talk, 20 seconds of talk.
So just an interesting point. So you picked Judah, and I think that was a good, it says that the law, the Torah shall not depart from Judah. Well, we see, from that prophecy today in Israel, the ones that carried on the Torah were the Jewish people. So we see that come to pass. Mm-hmm. So if there's 3 verses, I'd like everybody to make a point. You mentioned that, Abraham's our father, Isaac's our father, and Jacob. Well, there's 3 things they all have in common. In Genesis 12:1, the promise that was given to Abraham, like verse down 3 and 4, it says that in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, the Messiah.
Yeah.
You go to Genesis 26, I think it's verse 4. He says the same thing to Isaac. In thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, the Messiah. You go to Genesis 28:14. He says the same thing to Jacob. And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. And he mentions there in Genesis 26, I know I'm going a little bit beyond my seconds
fine.
Here.
You're sharing good things.
In Genesis 26, why did he choose Abraham? Because he said this, because, this is Genesis 26:5, because Abraham obeyed my voice, kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my Torah.
Yeah.
Okay, that was way before Mount Sinai, okay? So the Torah was given to them, and we read in Revelation 12 and Revelation 14 that his children are those that keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Messiah, the one that was promised to come through Abraham's seed, through Isaac's seed, through Jacob's seed, the Messiah.
Amen. We'll do one more. One more. Susan.
I just want to say that what you were talking about, how part of you, when he comes, he'll take care of that other part. That reminds me of the scripture, once that which is perfect has come, that which is in part shall be done away with. There.
Thanks for sharing that.
Okay, the blessing of Ephraim and Manasseh. Could you get a little highlight on why he crossed his hands? Ooh.
Can I say I really don't know, and that one perplexed me? I'm still perplexed? Yes.
I mean, you can say that obviously it was always the second son who was going to get that blessing from Abraham, Isaac, and then obviously Jacob was doing that. But like me and Chad talked about, these portions are all about basically Ephraim being a blessed nation and then being that kind of catalyst to be able to have the belief in Yeshua that then will aid our brother Judah into. And so then that's why you get, those things. But
Can I add to that a little bit? As you were talking, I was also thinking about how, like you said, Ephraim is supposed to aid Judah. That's Ephraim's mission, really, to uphold our brother Judah. And I was thinking about what you were saying, and I was thinking Ephraim versus Manasseh. Manasseh, his name means forgetfulness. God made me forget my trouble while in exile. Ephraim is I was fruitful in exile. Because our mission isn't just to be forgetful while we are in exile. Our mission is actually to be fruitful. That we actually are given something. It's kind of like the parable of the talent, right? It's not just burying the talent in the ground and forgetting about it. It's also increasing it double.
And just a little bit of takeaway from it. I did read this Torah portion last night, and it did kind of summarize why his hands were crossed, and he said the younger will become greater than the older. So Judah was the firstborn. And so if it was Manasseh who was also going to become the greater, then Judah would end up becoming serving Manasseh.
We do have one more. Do I have permission for one more? Do I have permission for one more? I see a hand in the back of the room. I'll personally hand the mic. I'm coming back there. Well, we have people at home, so.
Well, I was going to say that their names mean something too. Ephraim means fruitful, where Manasseh means forgetful. So that's probably also, why the blessing was given to the fruitful one versus the one I'm going to forget my father's home and house and stuff.
So that wraps it up. I got a little chatty today, so. All right, let me close with a blessing over the Torah portion. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has placed everlasting life in our midst. Amen.